Exclusive contracted novel by Feilun Novel Network. People in Beiliang, 9 generations of sword immortals exposed on the golden list on the mainland of Kyushu. There are numerous imperial dynasties, and Lu Changfeng comes with a reincarnation editor to edit the 9th reincarnation and silently practice. One day, the Kyushu Sword Immortals list emerged, listing the top 30 strongest sword immortals in Kyushu. To everyone's surprise, the top 9 on the list were all one person. Ranked 9th on the Sword Immortal list, with a sword intent that startles the world. The green blade slays Haotian, the sword Saint Lu Bai, and his reincarnation is Lu Changfeng. Sword Immortal ranking 8th. Black Donkey travels the world, one hand imprisons Lotus Life, Tang Dynasty Crazy Immortal Kuharan, reincarnation. Lu Changfeng 7th on the Sword Immortal list. De Tianxing, invincible in the world, Kunlun Sword Immortal Li Changxing, reincarnated as Lu Changfeng. Sword Immortal ranking 7th. Riding the wind with the sword Wang Xianji. This person is invincible. I don't want Emperor Wu City anymore. It's important to escape first. Old Sword God. There are 10 swordsmanship in the world, with Mr. Lu monopolizing 12. The world owes Mr. Lu 2 swords. Nangong Push. Sir, help me seek revenge. Isn't it normal for me to warm the bed for him? Snow Moon Sword Immortal. Master, you can't escape from the palm of my hand. Follow me obediently. Feilun Novel Network reminds you that this novel and its characters are purely fictional. If there are any similarities, they are purely coincidental and should not be imitated. Chapter 1 Sword Immortal list descends to the world, editing the 9 generations reincarnation. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Beiliang, Tongtian Restaurant. It was noon, and the restaurant was full of seats. Diners and drinkers exchanged glasses, creating a lively atmosphere. 3 years no see, Mr. Lu's drunken immortal wine has become even more mellow in taste. It's not in vain that I've been thinking about it for 3 years. At a wine table by the window, 3 people sat. A young master in a golden robe and white fur. An old servant dressed as a groom with a missing front tooth. The last person is in the main position, with a green shirt and long hair, a face like a crown of jade, and an extraordinary demeanor. Lu Changfeng sat in the main seat, watching the young master and the old servant drinking happily with a smile on their faces. The young master in front of me is Su Fengnian, the crown prince of Beiliang who has just traveled for 3 years and returned to Beiliang. As for the old servant, it was Su Fengnian's horseman's sword, 9 yellow. 3 years ago, Lu Changfeng traveled across the Kyushu continent and traveled around the world. I accidentally met Su Fengnian and established the Tongtian restaurant in Beiliang City, so I stayed in Beiliang. In these 3 years, Lu Changfeng has also roughly grasped the situation of this world. This is called Kyushu continent. On the mainland, the 6 major dynasties of Tang, Yuan, Song, Ming, Qin, and Sui are competing for hegemony. During the Ming dynasty, Wu Dingguo was established, like the sun in the sky, with its sword pointing straight towards the north, with the intention of annihilating the Great Yuan dynasty and unifying the northern territory of Shenzhou. During the Great Song dynasty, the emphasis was on literature over martial arts, and the heir to the throne was weak and incompetent. Surrounded by strong enemies, the national strength is declining. Tang dynasty, located in the hinterland of Shenzhou, was succeeded by Emperor Taizong, who worked hard to govern, and the country's strength was thriving, with financial wealth ranking first in the world. In the Great Sui dynasty, On Guang was in power, and the court was in chaos, causing unbearable suffering for the people. 4 gate valves, scheming and fighting. In the martial arts world, the 6 paths of the 2 demon sects and the righteous path led by Yizihang Jingzhai are constantly entangled. The Yuan dynasty, fierce and bloodthirsty, ambitious, Mongolian elite cavalry, sharpening their swords, always wanting to go south and annex other countries. In the west, there is the Great Qin, with a majestic sky like the sea and unparalleled power in the world. Zulong swept across the 6 kingdoms, ascended to the throne, wiped out the 4 barbarians, pursued the enemy and fled north, and lay dead for thousands of miles. As the leader of the 6 major imperial dynasties in the world. Apart from the 5 major imperial dynasties, there are still surviving dynasties such as Liang and Beili in the 9 provinces. To the north of the Mongolian Yuan grassland, there is a mysterious and chaotic land. All countries in the world worship martial arts and honor the strong. A master can dominate a country, and a great master can dominate the martial arts of a country. As for heaven and earth, they communicate the power of heaven and earth, and suppress the martial arts movement of a country. One person can defeat 10,000 armies, terrifying without comparison. Above heaven and man, there are still great beings who are immortal and strong, ranking at the pinnacle of the human world. One person is against another country, between immortals and mortals. And the land immortals above the great immortality of heaven and humanity only exist in legends, possessing unpredictable abilities, wandering in all directions and traveling thousands of miles in a blink of an eye. In summary, this is a world with extremely high levels of danger, and even a slight mistake could lead to fatal consequences. Fortunately, at the beginning of his journey, Lu Changfeng obtained a reincarnation editor. Enhance your strength by editing your reincarnation identity. And this editor can only edit 9 times. Opportunities are rare, and after careful consideration, Lu Changfeng has set his 9th reincarnation as a sword immortal. To this day, his 9th reincarnation has finally been edited and successfully integrated with the 1st generation sword immortal. Although he only fused with 1 generation of sword immortals, in terms of combat power, Lu Changfeng is confident that few people in this world can threaten him. Since the crown prince likes it, we can't let down the fine wine. The 3 of us, you and I, can't rest until we get drunk. Perhaps it was because he finally integrated the strength of a legendary sword immortal that Lu Changfeng was rarely happy. With a wave of his big hand, the waiter brought several jars of fine wine. Looking at Lao Huang on the side, his eyes lit up. Let's rest when we're drunk, don't go back until you're drunk. Su Fengnian picked up his wine bowl and drank heartily with Lu Changfeng. However, Su Fengnian's alcohol tolerance is not good. In just a few rounds, I was already drunk, with hazy eyes, lying on the table, muttering vaguely. Upon seeing this, Lu Changfeng turned to toast with Lao Huang Xiaoyao. Drunken immortal roast wine is one of the few strong liquors in the world. After drinking a few jars, old Huang gradually showed his drunkenness. Boom! Boom! And at this moment, several thunderous explosions suddenly came from within the sky. Then the sky shone brightly, and the sky of Kyushu erupted with endless golden light. The purple aura is vast, and the vision is boundless. The heavenly way is revealed, and the golden list is displayed. Amidst the misty purple air in the sky, a huge golden list unfolds out of thin air, overwhelming the sky of Zhou. There are billions of creatures in the world, just look up and you can glimpse the full picture of that huge gold list. On the golden list, there are 5 gilded characters filled with infinite charm. The 9 provinces Sword Immortal list. Kyushu Sword Immortals list. It includes the 30 strongest sword immortals in the world of Kyushu. Those who make it to the list will receive heavenly Dao rewards. At the moment when the Kyushu Sword Immortal list appeared in this world, massive messages shone into the hearts of all the spirits in Kyushu out of thin air. Everyone instantly knows the purpose of this Kyushu Sword Immortal list. In the Wanmei mountain villa of the Ming dynasty, Shimen Chueshue, dressed in black, with a long sword in her arms, stood in the corridor, staring intently at the huge golden chart in the sky. The 30 strongest sword immortals in the world. Yi Gucheng, I wonder where you will rank. As the Daming Sword God, Shimen Chueshue has confidence to make it to the Zhou Sword Immortal list. I also believe that my old rival who lives alone in Beiliang City can also make it to the list. Compared to her own ranking, Shimenchueshue has a better ranking in Qiegucheng. Beiliang City and Yigucheng both looked at the huge golden list in the sky and remained silent. The Sui, Lingnan Song Dynasty Warlord. Song Ke looked at the dazzling sword immortal gold list hanging in the sky like a big sun, his gaze deep. Sword is the king of 100 soldiers, and sword is the king of 100 soldiers. People say that a sword is better than a sword, but he doesn't think so. What about the Lord of 100 soldiers and the sword immortal? Can they defeat the heavenly sword in my hand? I have 2 more words to say. The great Qin dynasty, Xianyang Palace. Ancestral dragon Ingzheng, dressed in a robe and holding a high throne, with extremely hot eyes. Is there any elixir of immortality in the heavenly way reward? As the emperor of the great Qin, Ingzheng has reached the pinnacle of power, and his only pursuit is longevity and boundless freedom. For this reason, he repeatedly ordered Feng Shi to seek immortality and visit medicine, but found nothing. Now, the heavenly Tao rewards mentioned in the Kyushu Sword Immortal list have given him hope again. The Tang, Song, Yuan, and other dynasties all had their own reactions. In the Liangqing of Liang North, inside the Tongtian restaurant, Old Huang, who had already shown his drunkenness, suddenly changed his mind when he appeared on the Jiuzhou Sword Immortal list. The alcohol aura dissipated out of thin air, and his gaze was sharp, staring straight at the gold list. Even the drunken Su Fengnian was awakened and looked at the huge golden list in the sky with a bewildered expression. Kyushu Sword Immortal list. Lu Changfeng looked at the huge gold list with interest on his face, then turned to his editor panel. Name. Lu Changfeng, age. 22, cultivation. True Immortal, 9 generations of Sword Immortal reincarnation. First generation Lu Bai, already merged, second generation Kuharan, to be merged, third generation. I don't know, where can I get in? Lu Changfeng looked at the list thoughtfully, and he was also curious. With the fusion of his lifelong Sword Immortal strength, how many places could he enter the so-called Sword Immortal list? With the emergence of the Kyushu Sword Immortal list, the mainland of Kyushu is full of wind and clouds, and all the powerful figures in the world's martial arts world are constantly staring at the Sword Immortal list. Suddenly, the Sword Immortal list bloomed with a golden light. A clear name appears on the gold list. 30th on the Kyushu Sword Immortal list. Chapter 2. Sword Immortal Final Table, Qin Sword Saint Gai Nye on the list. You are listening at novelfull.audio. 30th on the golden list. Gai Nye, the great Qin Sword Saint. Sword Saint Gai Nye. It's actually him. It's unbelievable that such a character can only rank last on the Sword Immortal list. Sword Saint Gai Nye, no one knows, no one knows. He learned from the most mysterious sect of the great Qin dynasty, Gigu, and is a contemporary descendant of Gigu. Carrying the Ghost Valley Rainbow, the Ghost Valley Breathing Art, and the 8 gates escaping Ghost Valley Strange Gate Art, all inherited from the Ghost Valley. Before leaving the mountain, he had already mastered the highest swordsmanship of Gigu, known as the one-blade broken throat and 100-step flying sword. And with the combination of vertical and horizontal swordsmanship, and with these 2 powerful swordsmanship, as soon as they emerged from the mountain, they killed the strongest assassin of the great Qin at that time, Black and White Xianxian. After this battle, he became famous all over the world. Appointed as the chief swordsmanship teacher of the ancestral dragon of the great Qin dynasty. At the age of over 30, he had already reached the peak of the great master and was the strongest swordsman of the great Qin, known as the Sword Saint. The strength is evident. The name of the Sword Saint Gai Nye is also famous among the countries around the world. For the inclusion of the Sword Saint Gai Nye on the list, everyone had already anticipated it. However, they all believed that masters like Gai Nye, who were at the peak of their power, had an absolute high ranking on the Sword Immortal list. Unexpectedly, he was just the last goalkeeper on the Sword Immortal list. Therefore, at the moment when the ranking of Sword Immortals was announced, the world was in a state of uproar. The peak of the Grand Master can only rank 30th on the Sword Immortal list. In other words, the lowest threshold for this Sword Immortal list is the peak of the Grand Master. Only swordsmanship experts who have reached the pinnacle of great masters have the qualification to be on the list. Taking the peak of the Grand Master as the threshold, the value of this Sword Immortal list is too high. Nonsense. This is the list listed by the Heavenly Tao, which only includes the 30 strongest Sword Immortals in the Kyushu world. Isn't it worth a lot of gold? So, it doesn't seem so difficult to understand that Sword Saint Xianxia ranks last on the Sword Immortal list. What I am more curious about than Xianxia being on the list is, who are the 20.9 Sword Immortals before Xianxia? You should know that the pinnacle of this great master Xianxia is only the 30th place on the Sword Immortal list. According to conventional thinking, the Sword Immortal who ranks ahead of him must be stronger than him. 29 Sword Immortals stronger than the peak of the Great Master. Among so many Sword Immortals, will there be even stronger Sword Immortals in the heavenly and human realm? Thinking of this, the strong players in the Zhou Jianghu are all burning with excitement, eagerly staring at the Sword Immortal list. Daming Imperial City. Zhu Hozhao stood at the head of the Forbidden City, and behind him Chao Jingchun, Iron Gallbladder God Marquis, and others also fell silent. Only when the Great Master is at the peak can he qualify for the list. The weight of this Sword Immortal list is not light. If we could recruit the characters on the Sword Immortal list and sweep away the barbarians of the Northern Great Yuan, wouldn't it be easy? Zhu Hozhao looked at the list of Sword Immortals with fiery eyes. The 30 strongest Sword Immortals in the world of Kyushu are a formidable force. If it can be obtained, it will dominate the world and not be a problem. When it comes to the peak swordsmen of the Great Master, I seem to have two of them, Daming. Zhu Ho seemed to remember something and turned to look at the Iron Gallbladder God Ho behind him. Uncle Huang, in your opinion, where can Yigucheng and Shimen Shueishue rank on this list? Xianxia is the pinnacle of the Great Master, and Yigucheng and Shimen Shueishue are also the pinnacle of the Great Master. Xianxia can make it to the list, so can Yigucheng and Shimen Shueishue. However, this ranking is unknown. The Sword Immortal list is created by the Heavenly Way. How dare I indulge in the will of heaven? Regarding Zhu Hozhao's inquiry, the Iron Gallbladder God Marquis did not take it to heart at all. He evaded it with a light and ethereal sentence that he dared not speculate about the will of heaven. Upon seeing this, Zhu Hozhao furrowed his brow slightly, feeling a bit uncomfortable in his heart. But I didn't say much. Wanmei Mountain Villa, Shimen Shueishue stands under the corridor with a slightly surprised expression. He never expected that the threshold for being on the Sword Immortal list would be so high. I thought that with the peak cultivation of a great master, I could at least enter the top 3 of the Sword Immortal list. Unexpectedly, the last place on the Sword Immortal list was already the peak of the Great Master. Now it seems that even if he makes it to the list, he probably won't be able to rank too high. Yigucheng, there should also be a resolution to our dispute. Shimen Shueishue unconsciously grasped the ancient sword and murmured. In the Ming dynasty, it is said that the two great sword gods in the martial arts world are Yigucheng, the lord of Beiliang city, and Shimen Shueishue of Wanmei Mountain Villa. Put the two people on equal footing. But there is no first place in literature and no second place in martial arts. As a swordsman, Shimen Shueishue has always wanted to know that it is her own sword that is faster. Still, Yigucheng's extraterrestrial flying immortals are sharper. For this reason, he even wants to publicly invite Yigucheng to battle. Just before it could be put into action, the Sword Immortal list was displayed in a dazzling manner. However, it's also good. The Sword Immortal list is created by the Heavenly Way, and its credibility is beyond doubt. As long as one's ranking is higher than Yigucheng, everyone in the world will know who is the first sword god of the Ming dynasty. On the other hand, the lord of Beiliang city, Yigucheng, is also in a similar situation. The Great Song Dynasty Bianjing Dynasty Hall. Emperor Zhao Go is discussing with his courtiers. The Sword Immortals on the Kyushu Sword Immortal list are all top-notch experts. If your majesty can recruit and use them, he will be able to defeat the Jin kingdom, directly attack the Yellow Dragon, and welcome back the two saints. The minister in the hall made a generous speech, and upon hearing it, Xiaogo's face on the dragon chair didn't look very good. How many years have passed since the Jianghu incident? Do you still want to welcome those two old guys back? Welcome back those two old guys, what else will the emperor do? Do we abdicate and give way to the virtuous? Xiaogo's face was a bit dark, but he couldn't speak clearly. Your words are reasonable, but the Sword Immortal list has just been released. I think the recruitment matter should be considered in the long run. Qin Hui saw that Xiaogo's face was not good, and as he grew old and refined, he naturally understood what the emperor was thinking and immediately spoke up. The prime minister's words are reasonable, but we need to consider them in the long run. Xiaogo quickly agreed when he saw the gang members coming. The courtiers still wanted to remonstrate, but Xiaogo said that the court meeting was over. The courtiers stepped down and blocked their mouths, forcing them to leave the court reluctantly. At this moment, a thunderous roar suddenly spread from the huge golden list in the sky. Ranked 30th on the golden list, Sword Saint Xianxia, bestow 1 Tianyuan pill. As soon as the words fell, a stunning stream of light suddenly shot out from the golden list, heading straight towards Xianyang in the Great Qin dynasty. Flowing light moved like lightning, rushing into the Xianyang palace in an instant. Hanging in front of the Sword Saint Xianxia, the crystal-clear pill emits a misty treasure aura. In the main hall, the fragrance of grass and trees fills the air, making people feel like basking in spring breeze and invigorating. All the officials in the main hall looked at the Tianyuan pill in front of Xianxia with fiery eyes. This is a divine pill bestowed by the heavenly way. Who wouldn't be envious? Zulong Zhang's gaze was also very fiery. He seeks immortality and medicine for longevity. With the divine pill right in front of him, how can he not be moved? Mr. Xianxia, this pill. Zhang looked meaningfully at Xianxia. Xianxia naturally knows the thoughts of the ancestral dragon, and when it comes to the efficacy of the heavenly Yuan pill, it is true to the Tao and Zhang. Taking the Tianyuan pill can increase one's cultivation by 1 year, which is a dream for martial artists. But it doesn't have any longevity effect. Upon hearing that the Tianyuan pill had no effect on longevity, Zhang couldn't help but feel disappointed. However, 1 Tianyuan pill can increase one armor's cultivation, and such divine pills are not common. The heavenly way can even bestow such divine elixirs, but it may not be impossible not to bestow the elixir of immortality. And what he needs to do is how to get the longevity medicine from those sword immortals on the list. At the same time, the Quicksand Organization. Bai Wei Zhuang held the shark-toothed sword in his hand, his cold eyes like a venomous snake, staring fixedly at the familiar name on the sword immortal list. In my eyes, a hint of mockery passed by. Gigu swordsmanship is in your hands, yet it has fallen so lonely. Senior brother, you are too disappointing. Chapter 3 Sword Immortal List 29, Extinct from the Jianghu Yen Nantian. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. As both disciples of Gigu, Wei Zhuang and Xianxia are destined enemies. Wei Zhuang has always been dissatisfied with his senior brother. Whether it's swordsmanship or Ghost Valley strategy, Wei Zhuang thinks he's not inferior to his senior brother Xianxia. But the master only recognized Xianxia and bestowed upon him the identity of a descendant of the Ghost Valley. As is widely known, in every generation of Ghost Valley, only one disciple can obtain the identity of a descendant of Ghost Valley. Xianxia has become a descendant of Ghost Valley. And he can only walk in the world as a member of the Ghost Valley sect. He is not convinced in his heart. Now, seeing his senior brother's name appear at the bottom of the Kyushu Sword Immortal list, Wei Zhuang's heart is filled with endless ridicule. In his opinion, Ghost Valley swordsmanship is the best swordsmanship in the world. Mastering the Ghost Valley swordsmanship is enough to climb to the top of the strong ranks. However, Xianxia only qualified to reach the bottom of the Sword Immortal list. In Wei Zhuang's view, it was Xianxia who was unable to unleash the power of Ghost Valley swordsmanship. If it were him, it would never be an awkward ranking at the end of the crane. Wei Zhuang suddenly stood up, his hands unconsciously gripping the hilt of the sword, and his corner of the eye gleamed as he looked towards the direction of Xianxia. Senior brother. Soon my name will also appear on the list. At that time, the world will know who deserves the title of Descendant of Ghost Valley. With the 30th ranked flower on the gold list falling to Xianxia, the world's rivers and lakes are boiling. Almost everyone is discussing, who would be the 29th Sword Immortal. A group of wealthy guests in the Beiliang Tongtian restaurant are also discussing. I think the 29th place on the Sword Immortal list should be either the Daming Sword God Yi Gucheng or Shimen Chuexue. How can we see it? Think about it, only when a great master reaches his peak can he make it to the list, ranking 29th. Even if his cultivation level is the lowest, he cannot be lower than the peak of a great master. According to this criterion, currently only the two individuals, Yi Gucheng, the sword god of the Ming dynasty, and Shimen Chuexue, meet the criteria in Kyushu. Who can they be if they are not? Words make sense. Words make sense. Can you please tell me, brother, whether these 20.9 are Yi Gucheng or Shimen Chuexue? I really don't know. Anyway, either Yi Gucheng or Shimen Chuexue, there's no other choice. Su Fengnian, who had been awakened by the Sword Immortal list in the present world earlier, heard this and his expression moved. Yi Gucheng and Shimen Chuexue are both Ming sword gods with unparalleled strength. When I travel around the world, I have heard of their deeds. I think the 29th place on the Sword Immortal list will fall into the hands of two people without any accidents. It's just that these two people, with their strength and reputation, are on par with each other. It's really difficult to determine who is better. Mr. Liu, do you think the 29th place on the Sword Immortal list is Yi Gucheng or Shimen Chuexue? Su Fengnian smiled and looked at Lu Changfeng, casually asking. Unexpectedly, Lu Changfeng shook his head without hesitation and said, not even. Oh. Upon hearing these words, Su Fengnian immediately became interested. Aren't they? Is their ranking on the Sword Immortal list even higher? No way. Lu Changfeng saw that Su Fengnian misunderstood his meaning and quickly shook his head, saying. What I mean is, with their strength, they can't even make it to the Sword Immortal list. Can't make it to the Sword Immortal list. Su Fengnian was even more puzzled and said, Mr. Liu, how could this be possible? Yi Gucheng and Shimen Chuexue are both at the pinnacle of great masters. How could they not make it to the Sword Immortal list? Even old Huang, who frequented drinking, cast curious glances. Faced with their curiosity, Lu Changfeng calmly said, if the 30th place is not Xianxia, there is still hope for them to make it to the list. But the 30th place is Xianxia, and the two of them have no qualification to be on the list. Lu Changfeng's words made Su Fengnian even more confused, but old Huang beside him seemed to understand something and smiled silently. It's simple, although Xianxia, Yi Gucheng, and Shimen Chuexue are all at the peak of the great masters. But when it comes to strength, Xianxia is better than Yi Gucheng and Shimen Chuexue. Xianxia is only in 30th place, how can Yi Gucheng and Shimen Chuexue qualify for the list? Lu Changfeng directly pointed out his words, stating that Yi Gucheng and Shimen Chuexue are not as good as Xianxia, so it is impossible to make it on the list. Unexpectedly, as soon as these words were spoken, Su Fengnian smiled. Mr. Liu, you are a scholar with a rich imagination. Jianxing Xianxia has always been in Xianyang, while Yi Gucheng and Shimen Chuexue are far away in the Ming dynasty. The three have never met before. How do you know that Xianxia is stronger than Yi Gucheng and Shimen Chuexue? Not to mention the three of them, even Yi Gucheng and Shimen Chuexue, who are also in the Ming dynasty, have never fought each other. How do you know that their strength is not as good as Xianxia? Su Fengnian never believed in Lu Changfeng's judgment at all. Lu Changfeng was a literati who stayed in Beiliang for 3 years without any strength to bind chickens. I have never been to the great Qin and Ming dynasties, how could I possibly know the strength of the 3 great masters at their peak? Su Fengnian can only be regarded as Lu Changfeng's casual nonsense, and it's not a big deal. Upon seeing this, Lu Changfeng smiled slightly without explaining. And at this moment, the huge golden chart in the sky once again made a strange move. Here we go. Su Fengnian's spirit lifted and he said, Mr. Lu, you will soon know that you guessed wrong. Is that right? Lu Changfeng glanced at the Sword Immortal list with a smile on his face, not paying attention to its movements. He only tasted the fine wine on his own, completely ignoring the Sword Immortal list. With the changes in the Sword Immortal list, Shimen Shueishue, the Lord of Baiyun City, Yi Gucheng, and the Lord of the Daqin Flowing Sand Organization, Wei Zhuang, have emerged from the Daming Wanmei Mountain Villa. At this moment, the hearts of these 3 great masters and peak swordsmen all rose to their throats, staring intently at the movements of the Sword Immortal list. All the kingdoms, empires, and martial arts powerhouses in the world are holding their breath and staring at the Sword Immortal list with eager eyes. At this moment, everyone in Kyushu is eagerly anticipating the emergence of the 29th Sword Immortal, Jing. Finally, amidst the fervent anticipation of everyone, the golden list floated and the purple air steamed. A line of big characters fell into the eyes of the common people in Kyushu. 29th on the golden list, Sword God Yen Nantian. Half-step heavenly man. At the moment this name appeared, the entire Ming dynasty shook up and down. Countless senior celebrities, their pupils suddenly shrank, with a ghostly expression on their faces. How could it be him? He didn't die. The whole Ming dynasty is amazed. Before this, everyone thought that the 29th place on the Sword Immortal list was either Yi Gucheng or Shimen Shueishue. Unexpectedly, the 29th place on the Sword Immortal list is not Shimen Shueishue, let alone Yi Gucheng. Surprisingly, it's him. Yen Nantian. The previous generation of the Daming Sword God, who disappeared from the martial arts world for 20 years. An older generation of sword gods than the late sword god Xiaofeng from the previous generation. A legendary man who should have died for 20 years. With the release of the Sword Immortal list, not only the Ming dynasty, but also the 9 provinces of the world are in great shock. Chapter 4. Inviting the moon to avenge injustice and clear the snow, Sword God returns. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Wanmei Villa, Shimen Shueishue looked incredulously at the prominent name on the list. He thought that with his own strength, there was no doubt about being on the list, but he didn't expect that things would go against his wishes. Who would have thought that at the end of the Sword Immortal list was the peak of the Great Master, and at the 29th, he became a half-step heavenly person. The ranking on the Sword Immortal list is equivalent to recognizing that he and Yi Gucheng are both weaker than Xianxia. I originally intended to use this opportunity to separate myself from Yi Gucheng, but now it seems that it's all his wishful thinking. A sense of defeat rose in Shimen Shueishue's heart. The Quicksand organization held the shark-toothed sword in Wei Zhuang's hand, which was already green and white. On the back of my hand, my veins are bulging. Staring intently at the Sword Immortal list, with a face that couldn't accept it. It's impossible. My Ghost Valley swordsmanship is the strongest, why can't I make it to the list? Wei Zhuang's heart was filled with anger, and he had always believed that he was not weaker than his senior brother Xianxia. So, when Xianxia reached the bottom of the Sword Immortal list, he continued to mock him. And I assume that I can also make it on the list, and my ranking will be higher than that of Gain. Unexpectedly, the 29th place on the Sword Immortal list was already a strong player in the half-step heaven and human realm. That is to say, he no longer qualifies for the list. In other words, Tian Dao, who has scheduled the Sword Immortal list, believes that he is not as good as his senior brother Xianxia. This makes Wei Zhuang, who has always been rebellious and thinks he is stronger than Xianxia, unbearable. Angry in my chest, I drew my sword and rose up. At the location of the quicksand organization, sword lights burst forth in an instant, accompanied by waves of roaring and roaring. Beiliang, Tongtian Restaurant. Su Fengnian also had a surprised expression on his face. Previously, the list had not been released yet, and he only thought that Lu Changfeng was just talking nonsense. Unexpectedly, Lu Changfeng's words became a prophecy. The Yannan heavenly list confirms Lu Changfeng's judgment. Yi Gucheng and Shimen Chuexue really don't qualify for the list. Mr. Lu, how did you know that Yi Gucheng and Shimen Chuexue were not eligible to be on the list? Su Fengnian put away his shock and curiously asked Lu Changfeng. Lu Changfeng chuckled and casually said, "Damn it." Su Fengnian's expression froze and he didn't delve too deeply. With the Yannan heavenly list, stories about Yannan heavenly also spread throughout the world. Born with divine power. At the age of over 10, wandering in the martial arts world, wielding a pure yang boundless sword, wandering the world, full of chivalrous spirit. At the age of over 20, he has already reached the peak of the great master and is famous all over the world. Invincible in 100 battles, and in his 30s, he successfully entered the realm of half a step heaven and man. Promoted to be the first sword god in the martial arts world of the Ming dynasty at that time. Its popularity even surpassed other top-notch experts of its time. But 20 years ago, this first sword god mysteriously disappeared due to an headless case. And this headless public case involves the existence of another taboo in the Ming dynasty's martial arts world, the invitation of the Grand Palace Master of the Flower-Moving Palace to the moon. Within the territory of Beiliang, there is a branch of the Yihua Palace. After seeing the Yannan heavenly list, the beautiful cheeks, like eternal ice, without any ripples, finally showed a rare excitement. Yen Nantian. You are indeed not dead. Inviting the moon was extremely exciting. Back then, Yulang Jiangfeng was killed all over his family. People say that it was her ruthless act of jealousy towards Jiangfeng and Hua Yunu. Afterwards, the sword god Yan Nantian avenged his sworn brother Jiangfeng and personally went to the Yihua Palace. Mysteriously disappear. And everyone in the world thought that she invited the moon to kill Jiangfeng and Yan Nantian. Curse her snake and scorpion heart secretly. In fact, Yan Nantian did come to the Yihua Palace and had a big battle with her. But in the end, Yan Nantian realized that he was not the murderer and retreated. Later on, she mysteriously disappeared, carrying the stigma of killing Jiangfeng and Yan Nantian for 20 years. In her perception, Yan Nantian may have really died, and only Yan Nantian knew that he was not the mastermind of the Jiangfeng case. Once Yan Nantian dies, he can only bear this reputation forever. But now, Yannan's heavenly ranking means he hasn't died. The injustice and accusations I have suffered can finally be cleared up. Inviting the moon, how can we not be excited? Someone. With the order of inviting the moon, the elder of the branch immediately walked into the palace. Send my command, all disciples of the flower-moving palace, pour out their nests and search for the whereabouts of Yan Nantian. The invitation month ordered. The feeling of suffering injustice is not good. She can't wait to find Yan Nantian and ask him to clarify that she didn't kill Jiangfeng. Obey me. The branch elder took the order and immediately stepped down, summoned the branch disciples, and took separate actions. The sword god Yan Nantian didn't die and even made it to the list. It's unbelievable. The half-step heavenly realm sword god can only rank 29th on the sword immortal list. The weight of this sword immortal list is probably too heavy. 29 people are half-step heavenly beings, but what about 20.8 and 20.7? They can't really be strong in the realm of heavenly beings, right? Inside the Tongtian restaurant, numerous drinkers speculate. How could it be that there are only a few heavenly beings in the entire Kyushu? How could they all be heavenly beings? I don't think it's impossible. Kyushu has a vast territory, with talented people and extraordinary talents, and even more so, people who hide dragons and tigers. Not to mention, heaven and man, even those who have a strong habitat and grow in size may not necessarily lack it. Indeed, crouching tigers and hidden dragons in Kyushu cannot be underestimated. As everyone was discussing, the Sword Immortal list shook again. A stream of light shot out from the Sword Immortal list, piercing through the sky and heading straight towards a certain place in Kyushu. 29th on the Sword Immortal list, Sword God Yen Nantian, bestow a small nirvana pill. With a loud roar, the stream of light flashed away and fell into a certain place at the border of Beiliang and Daming. It's the Villain's Valley. Yen Nantian is in the Villain's Valley. Someone recognized the place where the Heavenly Way reward was going, but it turned out to be the forbidden area of the Daming martial arts forest, the Villain's Valley, and suddenly exclaimed in surprise. Originally, Yen Nan was innocent and did not die. The reason why he went missing for 20 years was actually because he was deeply trapped in the Villain's Valley. Yen Nantian is in the Villain's Valley. The disciples of the flower-moving palace learned that Yen Nan was backward in the world and rushed to the Villain's Valley as quickly as possible. At this moment, in the Villain's Valley, Huangsha Gobi, huge white bones, can be seen everywhere. Yellow sand rolls up, the sky is dim yellow, and there is a dead energy everywhere. In a dilapidated courtyard, several men and women with evil faces stood in the courtyard. In between them, there stands a large cylinder. Inside the big jar was a majestic man in his 40s, with graying temples. This man is the sword god Yen Nantian, who has been extinct in the martial arts world for 20 years. And the few men and women around, dressed in incognito and full of evil looks, are the notorious top 10 villains. At this moment, the top 10 villains are staring at Yen Nantian, the living and dead person who has been tormented by them in the vat, with a tense expression, as if facing a great enemy. He won't wake up, will he? Tu Xiaoyao swallowed her saliva and looked fearful. The Sword Immortal list can be seen in all 9 states, and they naturally saw Yen Nantian on the list. Although Yen Nantian was turned into a living dead person by them, the heavenly reward is not insignificant. If Yen Nantian were to wake up naively through this, then they're done. What are you afraid of? Even if he wakes up, he's useless. We can't even deal with one useless person among the 10 of us. Blood Han Du Sha and Hahar sneered. During its heyday, Yen Nantian was certainly terrifying, but now after 20 years of persecution, it has become like a dead person. Even if it wakes up, what can it do? Despite this, none of the top 10 villains have relaxed and their nerves are constantly in a tense state. Seems like being on guard for something. Suddenly, a golden light descended from the sky and headed straight towards Yen Nan heaven. Not good. Stop that thing. Blood Han Du Sha was alert and took the lead in intercepting, while the other villains also took action one after another. They just overestimate themselves too much. That's just a heavenly reward, how can manpower stop it? The golden light suddenly appeared and disappeared into Yen Nantian's eyebrows in an instant. Done. The top 10 villains instantly turned ashen. Chapter 5. Slay the 10 great villains, Sword God enters heaven and man. You are listening at novelfull.audio. As the heavenly Tao reward infiltrates Yen Nantian's body, suddenly, a majestic aura erupted from his body. There seems to be a thunderous explosion inside the Yen Nan celestial body, accompanied by waves of dragon and tiger roars, and crimson blood is everywhere. The face, which had lost all consciousness due to years of torment from the top 10 villains, also showed a subtle change in expression. Her tightly closed eyes also began to twitch, as if about to open and awaken from the state of being alive and dead. It's better to take action first, and then you'll suffer. Kill. Blood Han Du Sha didn't wake up immediately after seeing Yen Nantian receive the heavenly Tao reward. Suddenly overjoyed. He knows that this is their last hope for survival. In an instant, he bullied his body forward and wielded a blood-colored long sword in his hand. With great force, he swung down with a heavy force, directly taking the neck of Nantian, who had not yet awakened, and heading away. His attack was fierce and ruthless, with the posture of cutting Nantian's head with a single blow. But when the distance between the long sword and Nantian was only a millimeter away, the black vat that trapped Nantian exploded with a loud bang. An iron hand quickly poked out like a bolt, and grabbed Du Sha's long sword. Du Sha's face changed greatly, and Nantian's big hands were like iron hoops. With a powerful and heavy long sword, he was caught and could not make any progress. Not good, rewind quickly. Du Sha, as a peerless assassin at the level of a great master, has deeply inherited the inheritance of the assassin's inability to achieve a single blow, soaring thousands of miles. After discovering that he had failed to attack Nantian, he instantly abandoned his long sword. Body exploding, trying to escape. But the other big hand followed closely, just in the blink of an eye, it fiercely grabbed Du Sha's neck and lifted him up in mid-air. Blood Hand Du Sha widened his eyes, his face full of fear, his legs kicking in the air, trying to break free from constraints, but all failed. Nan woke up innocent, run away. Li Dazue, Tu Jiaojiao, and others were extremely frightened when they saw Du Sha being captured in an instant. Among the top 10 villains, the Blood Hand Du Sha and Ouyang Dingdang brothers have the strongest strength. Qi Du Sha had no resistance at all and was captured. How else are they fighting? Everyone lost their fighting spirit and fled in all directions in a panic. Watching other villains abandon him, Du Sha's heart was filled with anger and despair. He tried his best to widen his eyes and open his mouth, as if he wanted to beg for mercy from the man who looked like a demon. Nantian ignored it and instead looked at the other villains who were scattered and fleeing. A hint of coldness flashed across my face. The top 10 villains are full of evil. At that time, he was threatened with the body of his sworn brother Jianghu and his orphan to be captured without restraint. Afterwards, he was tormented for another 20 years. According to the nature of the top 10 villains, after becoming a living dead person, I am afraid that my younger brother's body and orphan will have been tragically affected. Thinking of this, Nantian's anger surged in his chest. Slowly extend your right hand and lightly press against the void. In an instant, the entire realm of the evil men's valley was filled with ink clouds. A terrifying pressure resembling heavenly power descended from the sky, overwhelming the entire villain's valley. The other villains who quickly fled earlier are like mud cows falling into the sea. The escape speed slows down at a visible speed to the naked eye. As if trapped in a quagmire, difficult to break free from. The faces of the wicked showed signs of fear, struggling frantically. Under the control of Nantian's Blood Hand Du Sha, upon seeing this scene, he widened his eyes and was horrified. Heaven and man. This is the power of heaven and man. Nantian has been promoted to heaven. Heavenly beings interact with heaven and earth, and gods merge with heaven. By raising their hands and feet, they can harness the power of heaven and earth, which is unpredictable. 20 years ago, the top 10 villains also experienced Nantian's strength. At that time, although Nantian was very strong, he was still a half-step heavenly person. But now, they are already real human beings. This made Blood Hand Du Sha and other villains inexplicably frightened. They couldn't figure it out why Nantian, who had been abandoned by them, recovered so quickly and went even further, stepping into the realm of heaven and humanity. What was the reward that day, and was its efficacy so incredible? Daxia, spare your life. Lord Sword God, I am willing to change my ways and become your servant, using my humble life to redeem myself. I only hope you can save me a dog's life. Li Dazue, Tu Jiaojiao, and others have also seen the situation clearly at this moment. They are just ordinary great masters, who were scattered and fled by Nantian 20 years ago. In the end, they can only win by plotting and scheming. Nowadays, Jiangfeng's orphans are no longer in the valley, and it is impossible for them to threaten Nantian. Faced with a celestial sword god who had accumulated anger for 20 years, they had no choice but to beg for mercy. Nantian turned a deaf ear to the desperate plea for mercy from the wicked. With a wave of his big sleeve, silver-white sword chi surged out of his sleeve robe, instantly piercing through the eyebrows of the top 10 villains. The sound of the 10 wicked begging for mercy suddenly came to an end, and they collapsed weakly on the Gobi Desert. The top 10 villains have been entrenched in the Villains' Valley for many years, full of evil. Today, they have finally subdued their bodies. As the saying goes, whoever kills will always be killed. And at this moment, the Sword Immortal list shook. The grand heavenly voice spreads throughout Kyushu. 28th on the Kyushu Sword Immortal list. Tianxing, the heavenly man of Mingjian Mountain Villa. Chapter 6. Jointly slaying the king of Xiaoyao, contemporary with Zhang Sanfeng. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. As soon as the heavenly sound fell, a startled swan shot out from the Sword Immortal list and in an instant ran for thousands of miles, falling into the territory of the great Song dynasty. Tianxing from Mingjian Mountain Villa. Who is this person? Why have you never heard of it before? When I saw a very unfamiliar name ranking 28th on the Sword Immortal list, all the creatures in Kyushu were shocked. It's unclear who Tianxing is, and what kind of influence is this Sword Mountain Villa. I have heard of Shenjian Mountain Villa and Baijian Mountain Villa, but why has this famous Sword Mountain Villa never been heard of? The heavenly way rewards the great Song dynasty, and this Sword Mountain Villa must be a force of the great Song dynasty. Go check it out. All the countries in the world want to know who the strange Sword Immortal who suddenly made the list is. At this moment, in front of the Jinding Zhenwu Hall in Daming Wudong, the seventh son of Wudong, Song Yuanxiao and others, looked at the names on the gold list and were extremely excited. It's Uncle E is still alive. Go and report to Master, Uncle E is still in the world. Song Yuanxiao quickly ordered his senior brothers to invite Zhang Sanfeng, who was already in seclusion. On the summit of the Golden Summit, an old Taoist dressed in a Taoist robe, with white beard and hair, exuding an immortal demeanor and a spirited spirit, looked at the name on the Sword Immortal list and caressed his beard, smiling. Under the exploration of various forces, everything about Mingjian Villa quickly surfaced. Originally, Mingjian Mountain Villa was indeed a powerful force of the great Song dynasty. But it actually existed 120 years ago. And this old sword god named Tianxing, with a high generation, is rare in the world. In terms of age, he is one generation higher than Zhang Sanfeng, the founder of Wudong in the Ming dynasty today. I am a close friend with Zhang Sanfeng. 120 years ago, in the great Song dynasty. At that time, the Yi family of the famous Sword Mountain Villa was the leader of the great Song swordsmanship. The manor master Yi Yun is renowned throughout the world, and his family's unique skill, the 8 forms of sword, is renowned throughout the world. It is a sword technique that is on par with Dugujiujian and can directly point to the land immortal realm. Yi Yunyu has 2 sons. The eldest son is cowardly and has average qualifications. The second son, Tianxing, is exceptionally talented and has a remarkable talent in martial arts. Under the age of 18, he practiced his family's legendary sword 8 moves to the extreme. And comprehend the famous 8 swordsmanships, the final form of the 8 swordsmanships flying together, stepping on the heavenly man with half a step before the age of the weak crown. Renowned as the most promising land deity for preaching, and a martial arts leader in the martial arts world of the Zhongxing Great Song dynasty. Unfortunately, Tianxing became famous at a young age and had a rebellious nature, even falling in love with his sister.in.law. And on the day of their elder brothers and sister.in.law's wedding, they caused a big uproar at Mingjian Mountain Villa. In the end, he was expelled from Mingjian Mountain Villa by his father Yi Yun, and from then on, his mind changed greatly. He went crazy and traveled around the world. With half a step to reach the pinnacle of cultivation, wandering the world, wasting 20 years. When these news surfaced, the world trembled with excitement. At the age of 18, he became a half-step celestial being, and his martial arts talent is too terrifying. When we invite the Moon Palace Master to be promoted to half-step heavenly man in the Ming dynasty, it seems that he is already in his 20s. A half-step heavenly person under the age of 18 is really amazing. In the era when land immortals did not emerge, heaven and man were the pinnacle of Kyushu martial arts. Looking around Kyushu, how many people are there in total? Countless. Not to mention celestial beings, even half-step celestial beings are very rare. 18-year-old Bamboo Tianren is even unheard of. Moreover, Tianxing also practiced his family's unique skill, the 8 forms of the land immortal level martial arts sword, to the extreme. Martial arts talent, swordsmanship talent, shocking. I can't help but be shocked by everyone. With the talent of this Ilao sword god, I'm afraid he really has the potential to prove himself as a land god. Unfortunately, things are unpredictable. In the Tongtian restaurant, everyone was filled with emotion. With Tianxing's strength, if he hadn't wasted 20 years, his achievements should have been even higher. It's just a pity that being trapped in a romantic relationship has missed the bright future. Trapped in love, even after 20 years of wasted time, he can still make it to the Sword Immortal list. This Ilao sword god is also a powerful figure. Even Su Fengnian and Lao Huang nodded in praise. Tian was injured by his behavior and was expelled from Mingjian Mountain Villa. I am confused all day long. Until I met a young junior. Zhang Junbao. That is the current founder of Wudong, Zhang Sanfeng. At that time, Zhang Sanfeng had just escaped from Shaolin and became embroiled in the struggle among the 4 demons in the western regions. Zhang Sanfeng was defeated by the 4 demons and ultimately saved by Tianxing. The two of them became friends at first sight and traveled together. Later, the Lord of the 4 demons, the king of western regions, plotted to overthrow the martial arts of the great Song dynasty. Heading north one after another, killing the holy monk ahead. Later, he headed south and broke into Mingjian Mountain Villa. Losing the Mingjian Mountain Villa, where Tianxing was stationed, greatly reduces its strength. The old village leader Yun was also a strong person in the past, but he was old and weak, coupled with his legs being disabled. Killed by King Xiaoyao. The 8 divine swords enshrined in the underground sword house of Mingjian Mountain Villa, which record the unique skills of the 8 styles of Mingjian, have also been looted. The king of Xiaoyao scattered 8 divine swords into the Song dynasty's martial arts world, luring powerful individuals to engage in self-destruction. The great Song dynasty's martial arts world was filled with bloody storms and ups and downs. 90% of the strong died in this ancient turmoil. What kind of divine is this Xiaoyao king? How could he use his own strength to disrupt the martial arts world of the great Song dynasty into such a state? Due to its long history, many people are no longer aware of the Great Song Rebellion. Even the local experts of the Song dynasty are not many people who know about this matter. Therefore, some people have raised doubts. I am curious about the attraction of the 8 swords and the origin of the Xiaoyao king. The king of Xiaoyao is not easy. He is the strongest expert in the history of the western regions. 120 years ago, he had already reached the peak of heaven and humanity, and was an unparalleled powerhouse only one step away from the great longevity of heaven and humanity. Chapter 7. 8 Forms of Famous Swords, Land Immortal Level Swordsmanship. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The older generation of strong people in the Song dynasty vaguely remembered the past and revealed the secrets of the past. Xiaoyao Wang was originally a prince of a small country in the western regions, obsessed with practicing martial arts. Later, the 36 kingdoms of the western regions engaged in a melee, and the small country where the Xiaoyao king was located was destroyed. However, this person became obsessed with martial arts and had no intention of restoring the country. On the contrary, he wandered around and engaged in a melee with the 36 kingdoms, using killing to nourish the war and honing his martial arts skills. And he was amazed to study the martial arts of the 36 kingdoms, integrating them all into one body, promoting heaven and humanity, creating mind-capturing techniques, and manipulating people's hearts. After reaching the pinnacle of martial arts in the western regions, the king of Xiaoyao remembered that when he destroyed his country, his own small country once sought help from the Great Song, but the Great Song did not lend a helping hand. So he harbored a grudge and plotted to overthrow the Song dynasty. At the age of 50, he invaded the martial arts world of the Song dynasty. Killing the powerful Song dynasty warriors, he was later defeated by the martial arts masters of the Song dynasty. The Shaolin holy monk and the master of the Mingjian mountain villa, Yi Yun, fought for 3 days and 3 nights. In the end, the holy monk was deposed from cultivation, and Yi Yun broke his legs, but also successfully defeated the king of Xiaoyao. After the defeat of King Xiaoyao, he felt ashamed and continued to hone his martial arts skills. Finally, at the age of 80, he was promoted to the pinnacle of heaven and humanity. Then he made a comeback, killing the holy monk and Yi Yun, preparing to overthrow the martial arts world of the great Song dynasty. And the holy monk who had the grace to preach to Zhang Sanfeng, as well as the father of Tianxing, all died at the hands of the king of Xiaoyao. The two of them couldn't bear the wrongdoing of the Xiaoyao king, so they entered the martial arts world and retrieved the 8 divine swords. Let's fight the Xiaoyao king. At that time, Zhang Sanfeng was still in seclusion, while Yi Tianxing was delayed for 20 years. The power has just entered the realm of heaven and humanity, while the king of Xiaoyao is only one step away from the great longevity of heaven and humanity, and his strength is immeasurable. Can Yi Tianxing Tianzong Qi Kai, using his family's famous swordsmanship and 8 moves, he is able to resist the 3 days and 3 nights of the Xiaoyao king. Divide the autumn colors equally, it's difficult to distinguish between high and low. Yi Tianxing's talent is indeed terrifying, but talent cannot be eaten as food. No matter how high his talent is, he is just a newcomer to heaven, but the king of Xiaoyao has already reached the pinnacle of heaven and humanity. No matter how high his talent is, he may not be able to make up for the gap in his realm, right? After being explained by a famous scholar of the Song dynasty, everyone knows the origin of the king of Xiaoyao. But when I heard that Yi Tianxing had just entered heaven and was able to fight against the peak demon lord Xiaoyao Wang for 3 days and 3 nights, I had some doubts about the authenticity of the matter. Everyone is right, high talent does not necessarily mean high combat power. Yi Tianxing is indeed just a newcomer to heaven. Normally, it's impossible to be the opponent of the Xiaoyao king, let alone fight against him for 3 days and 3 nights, with no clear winner. But don't forget, everyone, he possesses a land immortal level swordsmanship. Are you saying that the 8 swords of the famous sword are flying together? Not bad, the 8 styles of famous swords are really so powerful that they can make Yi Tianxing, who was in the early days of heaven and man, comparable to the king of Xiaoyao. Land immortal level swordsmanship is rare after all, and not many people have seen it, so it is inevitable to question its power. Of course, the 8 masters of famous swords are genuine land immortal level swordsmanship. This is the unparalleled skill of the famous Sword Mountain Villa. This swordsmanship points directly at the land immortal realm, its power is unpredictable. Especially in the 8th style, 8 swords flying together. Once completed, one can wield the 8 swords to defend against enemies in the air. With one sword from thousands of miles, one can conquer mountains and open mountains, surpassing the realm of martial arts and becoming a true immortal family's divine power. Whoever can obtain the 8 styles of the famous sword has the qualification to become one of the strongest in the world. And this swordsmanship skill is recorded in the Mingjian Mountain Villa. Jueming Sword, Qingming Sword, Purple Electric Sword, White Jade Sword, Mu Tai Sword, Glass Sword, Xuanwu Sword, Nameless Sword, and 8 Divine Swords. The 8 styles of famous swords, combined with the 8 swords, are unparalleled in attack and defeat. Therefore, after the 8 swords scatter into the martial arts world, the strong in the world will fight fiercely for them. Tianxing also wielded 8 swords, combined with the famous 8 swords 8 styles, to fly together in order to fight against the Xiaoyao king for 3 days and 3 nights. If it were an ordinary celestial being, I'm afraid I would have been slapped to death by the king of Xiaoyao. I see. Everyone learned the reason behind it and couldn't help but admire Tianxing in their hearts. As a newcomer to heaven, I am worthy of admiration for my courage and strength in the decisive battle against the great demon owl. The battle between Xiaoyao king and Tianxing lasted for 3 days and 3 nights, and their skills were greatly depleted. Finally, Zhang Laozhen from Wudong successfully broke through the level and teamed up with Tianxing to jointly slay the king of Xiaoyao, which brought peace to the martial arts world of the great Song dynasty. After the completion of the Yilaojian divine art, has the Mingjian villa been rebuilt and passed down? Some people are concerned about the inheritance of the naming sword 8 styles, which is a land immortal level swordsmanship. Who wouldn't be interested? No. Lao sword god and Zhang Jinren jointly beheaded Queen Xiaoyao, and Zhang Jinren traveled far across the world to establish Wudong. And Lao Jianshen retired with his beloved wife. It has been 120 years now. I thought the old sword god should have passed away, but to my surprise, he is still alive in this world. How old is a person who has been around for 120 years still alive? Lao sword god is about 20 years older than Zhang Jinren in Wudong. Zhang Jinren has a fairy lifespan of 140 years this year. You can calculate it yourself. With the exposure of Tianxing's deeds, everyone in the world knows about the glorious past of this old sword god. At the same time as admiring for a moment, it is inevitable to have other thoughts. Daming Imperial City. Zhu Hozhao stood at the head of the city with a deep gaze. Land immortal level swordsmanship. For beginners, you can fight against the peak of heaven and humanity. This sword's 8 moves are truly extraordinary. If I could obtain it, perhaps I could cultivate a true land sword immortal. While whispering, Zhu Hozhao calmly glanced at the iron gallbladder god Marquis beside him. There is still half a sentence left, he hasn't finished speaking. My imperial uncle, over the years, his strength has become stronger and stronger, but he has become even more restless. And in the court, there are very few who can compete with it. If one can obtain the 8 styles of the famous sword and cultivate a master who is only loyal to the royal family. He now has the confidence to balance his ambitious uncle. The great Song dynasty is also noisy at this moment. Good, good. God bless me, Song. Finally, Song has produced a peerless sword god. In the Qinglong palace, the courtiers were overjoyed, even Emperor Xiaogo had a smile on his face. Although he is not talented enough and a bit foolish, he is still quite happy that his own imperial court has produced a sword god. Your Majesty, I suggest that you immediately bring a generous gift and go to pay homage to the god of Lao sword. I have submitted a memorial to you. It's rare for me in the Song dynasty to have a sword god, so I must make good friends. I have a second opinion. If the Yilaojian god can come out of the mountain to assist, our Song dynasty will sweep away the Jin dynasty and welcome back the 2 saints. It's just around the corner. Zhao Go, who was on the throne, was very happy to hear the first few pieces of advice and was about to wave his hand with precision. But when I heard that these old guys were about to welcome back the second sage, my face turned black with anger. Welcoming back the sword god is imperative, but we still need to consider in the long run. Qin Hui, let's leave this matter to you to handle. Zhao Go cast a meaningful glance at Qin Hui, who was his confidant and henchman. I suddenly understood and quickly thanked you. Subsequently, Zhao Go retreated directly from the court, leaving only a large number of officials and workers, still feeling extremely happy. At the same time, during the Great Song dynasty, Jianghu was under its jurisdiction in a certain mountain forest. A tall old man in brown clothes with white beard and hair is sitting in front of a solitary tomb at this moment. Drinking alcohol while muttering to oneself. It's like confiding something to someone in a solitary tomb. On the tombstone, there are several powerful characters engraved. Descendant of Medicine King Valley, Tomb of Loved Wife Bing Xian. Chapter 8. Tianxing returns to the Jianghu, inviting immortals and demons to fight. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Xianer, do you know that the current world of martial arts is very different from our time? Now a list of sword immortals has emerged, and there are still many sword immortal experts on the list, which makes me feel a bit itchy and want to go out and seek advice. This old man with white hair is the sword god Tianxing who fought alongside Zhang Sanfeng against the king of Xiaoyao in the past. Back then, he teamed up with Zhang Sanfeng to defeat the king of Xiaoyao and solve the crisis in the martial arts world. I will retire to the mountains and forests with my beloved wife, and no longer inquire about matters in the martial arts world. Just be a carefree couple of gods and immortals. It's just a pity, youth is fleeting, beauty is fleeting. The lifespan of a celestial being is 200 years, but his wife is not celestial and has a limited lifespan. I passed away from him 60 years ago. The couple had no offspring under their knees, and after Bing Xian's death, only Tianxing remained. Heart. Unconsciously, you have been walking for over 60 years. Tianxing looked at his wife's tombstone with a soft gaze. For the past 60 years, I have been giving you incense every year, not a bad year. I really didn't want to move anymore. I wanted to stay with you in a few more years. But now, I'm afraid it won't work. Tianxing murmured, normally, a strong person in the realm of heaven and humanity can live for 200 years. But Tianxing fought against the king of Xiaoyao for 3 days and nights, which damaged his foundation. According to his estimation, it would be difficult for him to survive beyond 103. Unexpectedly, he survived until the age of 160. However, in the past 2 years, he has become increasingly powerless and knows that the deadline is approaching. I don't want to fuss anymore, I'm prepared to wait for death honestly. Unexpectedly, just now when he ascended the sword immortal list, the heavenly Tao bestowed a divine medicine. In an instant, he swept away all the serious illnesses in his body. It can also be considered as a disguised extension of life for decades. I can live another few decades, but now I have time to make up for what I felt regretful about. Heart, don't worry, I'll choose a suitable successor after I've met Zhang Junbao. Pass down the 8 styles of the famous sword, and I will come back to accompany you. Tianxing whispered in a low voice. When his lifespan was approaching, he had 2 regrets. One is to meet Zhang Junbao. Another issue is the inheritance of the 8 styles of famous swords. The 8 styles of the famous sword are the secret swordsmanship of the famous sword villa. Back then, his father Yun and nephew Jifeng died at the hands of King Xiaoyao. The Mingjian mountain villa was completely destroyed. He is the only one in the world who knows the 8 styles of famous swords. And he has never taken in any disciples. Once he dies, the 8 styles of the famous sword will be completely lost. Tianxing couldn't bear to falsely pass on his unique skills and lose them, so he thought of finding a successor to inherit the 8 styles of the famous sword. Unfortunately, despite searching around, I couldn't find a suitable one, so I put it on hold. Unexpectedly, this delay will last for decades. When he realizes the deadline is approaching and his body is weak enough to travel far. Now that he has recovered, his serious illness has been swept away, and his lifespan has increased by 30 to 40 years, which is enough for him to end these 2 regrets. Tianxing slowly stood up and finally turned around to take a look at his wife's tombstone, then strode away. The sword immortal ranking takes 7 breaks every 3 days. Every time 3 sword immortals are listed, they will be banned for 7 days. During these 7 days, the rivers and lakes of various countries have been turbulent. The discussion on the streets and alleys basically cannot avoid the 3 sword immortals on the list. First, on the side of Daqin, the sword Saint Gai Nye ascended to the bottom of the sword immortal list. His junior brother Wei Zhuang was dissatisfied and rushed to Xianying to arrange a battle with Gai Nye. After waiting for 3 days in the city, the sword Saint Gai Nye finally appeared. The peak battle of the Ghost Valley sect ended very easily. Wei Zhuang is truly a cultivator under the Ghost Valley sect, and his Ghost Valley swordsmanship has reached its peak. When facing Gai Nye, he wielded his sword with unparalleled sharpness. On the other hand, Gai Nye was incredibly calm and composed. I never drew my sword from beginning to end. In the end, with just a light palm, he forced Wei Zhuang to retreat and successfully defended his title as the last place on the sword immortal list. Originally, after taking the Tianyuan pill, Gai Nye had successfully promoted to the realm of heaven and humanity. The reason why Wei Zhuang waited for 3 days was precisely because he was promoted in seclusion. With Gai Nye's breakthrough, the threshold for the Kyushu sword immortal list has also changed from the peak of the great master to the realm of heaven and humanity. Secondly, the sword god Tianxing of the great Song dynasty was born, and all parties were eager to win over this sword god. Nations have dispatched strong men, carrying generous gifts, to search for the whereabouts of Tianxing. But the latter mysteriously disappeared, rumored to have gone to Daming. Finally, it is also the most shocking event in the martial arts world. After killing the top 10 villains in Nantian and returning to the martial arts world, the Grand Master of the Ihua Palace invites the moon and declares the world, inviting Nantian to battle in Beiliang. And after this news is released, stay in Beiliang city for 7 days, waiting for Nantian to join the battle. As soon as this news comes out, the whole world is in a state of uproar. Since Nantian made it to the sword immortal list, his long-standing grudge with inviting moon has become well known to everyone. There must be a big battle between the two of them, which has already become a consensus among everyone. To everyone's surprise, the invitation to the moon was so urgent. As soon as Nantian appeared, he eagerly invited a battle. Although Nantian has not yet responded, will he go to Beiliang for a decisive battle as scheduled? But this does not hinder the heated discussion of this matter among people all over the world. After all, neither of these two people is an unknown person, easy to match. One was to dominate the world without a single defeat 20 years ago. Trapped in death for 20 years, he once climbed the sword immortal list and was promoted to the peerless sword god of heaven and man. One has the talent of immortals and demons. 20 years ago, I had already cultivated the Mingyu divine skill to the 9th level, with eternal youth and youthful appearance. Now, after 20 years of cultivation, the Lord of the Flower-Moving Palace has already crossed the threshold of heaven and humanity. In today's world, there are very few celestial beings appearing, and the battle between the two great celestial beings is said to be a rare encounter in 100 years, which is somewhat exaggerated. But it's also an unmissable event. So, experts from all over the world rushed to Beiliang, hoping to observe this shocking battle. The inns in Beiliang city are fully booked in just a few days. As the most well-informed place in Beiliang city, the Tongtian restaurant has been doing quite well in business during this period. Heroes from various dynasties and rivers gather in the Tongtian restaurant. The final battle between the two masters. Even some good people set up gambling in the Tongtian restaurant, betting on the battle of inviting moon and Nantian, whoever wins or loses. Heaven, man, sword, god, immortal demon inviting the moon, destiny's decision, peak battle, don't miss it, hurry up and bet. Betting on, inviting the moon to win, with a 1 to 2 odds. Bet on Tianxing with a 1 to 20 odds. Why is the odds so outrageous? Nantian is a heavenly sword god, why is the odds so high? What does the banker mean by this? Are you convinced that Nantian will definitely lose? The gambling game is dominated by the banker, and the higher the odds, the more times the banker pays the gambler. Nantian's odds are 1 to 20, which means that if Nantian wins, the banker will have to pay the gambler 20 times the gambling capital. In other words, this banker basically doesn't believe that Nantian will win. I think this odds is normal. Nantian used to be very strong, but he was trapped in the Villain's Valley for 20 years and had no progress in cultivation. Although I received the reward of the Heavenly Way and was promoted to the position of Heavenly Man, my background is too shallow. On the other hand, Inviting the Moon has already stepped into heaven and humanity, with terrifying cultivation. In terms of strength alone, I think there is a greater possibility of winning this battle by inviting the moon. What we can all understand, the banker is not a fool. How could he not understand? Brother, what you're saying makes sense. It seems like it's better to bet on inviting the moon for safety. I still want to give it a try. If Nan naively wins, it will be 20 times the reward. At the same time, on the second floor of Tongtian restaurant, Su Fengnian leaned against the railing, tilted his head to look at Lu Changfeng, pointed to the lively gambling game downstairs, and smiled. Mr. Lu, are you not interested in placing a bet? Me. Upon hearing this, Lu Changfeng glanced at Su Fengnian and said with a smile on his face. What are you betting on, giving money to this banker? Chapter 9. Famous hero Shen Lang, mocking the eternal sword in the heavenly palace. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. You should know that neither side of this gambling game is easy. Especially the invitation month, who dares to gamble on her? Are you not afraid to come to the moving flower palace to ask for forgiveness? Within the territory of Beiliang, there is a branch of the Yihua Palace, and inviting moon has now arrived in Beiliang. The gambling game has been open for 7 consecutive days, but no expert from the Moving Flower Palace has come to take responsibility, which can already explain the problem. The banker of this gambling game has made the Moving Flower Palace wary and afraid to hold them accountable. Looking at Beiliang, those who have this ability, except for the Beiliang Prince's mansion, probably cannot find a second force. In the northern Liang Prince's mansion, it is estimated that only Su Fengnian can do such a thing. The banker is not him, who else can it be? As for this gambling game, in Lu Changfeng's view, there is no need to participate at all. Because the gamblers who enter the game either lose or win, the outcome is mixed. You think you won the bet, but the banker will never lose. What he was more curious about than this gambling game was which swordsman would make it to the Sword Immortal list today. Su Fengnian chuckled as Lu Changfeng's words broke through his roots. Lu Changfeng is right. Gamblers have their losses and wins, but the banker will never lose. Not only will it not compensate, but it is also the one who earns the most. As for Lu Changfeng's decision not to place a bet, he just casually asked, just adding to the list. In fact, this gambling game was not initiated by him, but was inspired by his master who had been imprisoned in the Chaoga for 20 years. And the reason for doing so is to play the role of a good playboy, so as to reassure the tall dragon chair in Tian City. At this moment, in a private room on the second floor of Tongtian restaurant, 2 graceful women in palace attire, stunning, sat among them. Sister, these people are really damn. How dare they make a bet on you? Do you want me to go down and stir up the bet? Lianxing had a sullen expression on her face, expressing great indignation about the gambling game set up downstairs. Forget it. If it's an ordinary person playing a game, if you stir it up, then stir it up, said Inviting Moon with a wave of her hand, but after all, this is Beiliang, strong dragons don't suppress local snakes. The fact that Beiliang has a branch of the Yihua Palace and the Tongtian restaurant has opened a gambling game has long been heard by Inviting Moon. The so-called mysterious gambler had already been discovered by her. At first, Inviting Moon was also very angry and wanted to ruin the gambling game. But on second thought, there was no need to offend the king of Northern Liang. Moreover, this gambling game may not necessarily be a bad thing for her. She was notorious for killing Jianghu for 20 years. Now that I finally have the opportunity to reveal the truth, I chose to invite Yan Nantian to battle in Beiliang. Isn't it just to take advantage of the bustling and well-informed environment here to spread the news and prove innocence? The more people participate in the gambling game, the better it is for her. Compared to gambling, she cares more about Yan Nantian's whereabouts. Has there been any news from Yan Nantian? Inviting Moon looked at Lianxing and asked softly. Lianxing silently glanced at her sister and shook her head, saying, "On the day when the shadow slave of the branch rudder went to the battle book of the Villain's Valley, Yan Nantian left the Villain's Valley without a trace. According to my sister's instructions, all the branch disciples have been dispatched to search for Yan Nantian's whereabouts. Just haven't received any news yet. Sister, Yan Nantian won't be afraid to fight and won't come, will he?" Lianxing was a bit worried, and this time the Moving Flower Palace announced to the world that it would make an appointment to fight against Yan Nantian. Inspiring teachers and moving masses, with a grand momentum. The gaze of the other countries has already been cast, and under the watchful eyes of everyone, if Yan Nantian breaks his promise. The face of the Moving Flower Palace is so big. No way. Inviting Moon shook her head confidently and said. With Yan Nantian's personality, he will never be afraid of war. Just wait. Just when the two sisters are talking. The sky is exploding, thunder is rolling. Over Kyushu, the Kyushu Sword Immortal list, which has been banned for 7 days, once again blooms with dazzling golden light. Giant list, slowly unfolding. The lives of Kyushu, as well as the eyes of everyone in Beiliang, once again turned to the Sword Immortal list. The names of Gai Nye, Yan Nantian, and Tianxing appeared one by one. The golden seal script characters emit a magnificent golden light, shining brightly. After the names of the three appeared, another name once again caught the attention of everyone. 27th on the Sword Immortal list, Shen. Mid-cycle of heaven and humanity. Famous hero Shen. He's also on the list. In the Tongtian restaurant, Lu Xiaofeng exclaimed in surprise, immediately attracting everyone's strange gaze. Do Lu Daxia recognize Shen? A master from outside the Ming dynasty looked at Lu Xiaofeng with a curious expression on his face. I don't really know, I just know Shenlang's reputation. Shenlang is one of the few famous swordsmen and sword gods in the Ming dynasty's martial arts world. Daming sword god. Why haven't you heard of it? Some people question that they have heard of the Ming sword god Xie Xiaofeng, Yan Nantian, Shimen Shueishue, and Yi Gucheng, but they are very unfamiliar with the name Shenlang. Lu Xiaofeng glanced at the person and said with a smile, there are many sword gods in the Ming dynasty. Not to mention, in today's world, there are Shimen Shueishue and Yi Gucheng, one south and one north, competing against each other. 10 years ahead, there is the sword god Xie Xiaofeng from Xinjian Mountain Villa, who was extremely popular for a while. 20 years ago, there was the sword god Yan Nantian who shook the martial arts world. And this Shenlang is the unparalleled Renxia sword god in the Ming dynasty's martial arts world 30 years ago. Oh! The Daming sword god from 30 years ago. Could you please elaborate a little bit, Great Xia Lu, to help us clarify our confusion? Everyone was attracted by Lu Xiaofeng's words and curious, even Su Fengnian upstairs cast interested eyes. Everyone, take your time and listen to me speak slowly. Shenlang has a prominent family background and comes from the Shen family, a martial arts aristocratic family. His father is the Prince of 9 provinces, Shen Tianjun. This king of 9 provinces is not a member of the Ming royal family, but a top martial arts expert. A top-notch expert on par with the happy King Chaiyu Pass. Shenlang is the legitimate son of Shen Tianjun. He has shown amazing talent since childhood and has been singing and advancing along the path of martial arts. At the age of 10, he scattered all his wealth and helped the world cry and weaken. Then he traveled the rivers and lakes, practicing chivalry and righteousness, and was known as wise. At the age of 20, I stepped into the realm of heaven and humanity. 20-year-old celestial beings. Upon hearing this, everyone took a deep breath together. Previously, at the age of 18, Tianxing had already shocked the world by entering the realm of heaven and earth. Now, fortunately, another 20-year-old celestial expert has emerged. How could everyone not be shocked? However, on second thought, if Tianxing had not been insane for 20 years, he might not have been able to step into heaven and humanity at the age of 20. But stepping into heaven and humanity at the age of 20, Shen Lang's talent is indeed terrifying. At that time, in the Ming dynasty's martial arts world, there was a demon named Chai Yuguan, who was nicknamed the living Buddha of all families, and also known as the Happy King. Although he appeared chivalrous on the surface, he was actually a demon who committed all kinds of evil. Chai Yuguan, in order to dominate the martial arts world, spread rumors that an invincible monk who relied on the invincible treasure trove 100 years ago was invincible in the martial arts world. Before sitting down, hide the inheritance of the invincible treasure book in Hengshan Huiyan Peak. So countless powerful martial artists rushed to Hengshan to compete for the invincible treasure, killing each other. The Happy King, on the other hand, is hiding in the dark, taking advantage of the situation and capturing all the experts from various sects in one fell swoop, mastering their true and unparalleled skills. Subsequently, after 10 years of hard work, he traveled far outside the pass and integrated 100 unique skills, becoming a peerless celestial and human expert. After becoming a celestial being, Chai Yuguan returns to the Ming dynasty, hoping to unify the martial arts world and bring disaster to the world. After the battle of returning to Yanfeng that year, the inheritance of each sect's unique skills was cut off, and the experts Youth and Yellow were not accepted, losing to Chaiyu Pass. At this moment, Shen Lang emerged from the sky and fought against the Happy King on the Huiyan Peak. In the end, he struggled to kill the Happy King and set sail to visit Immortals. With Lu Xiaofeng's narration, the events of that year were also known to everyone. In the wing room, Inviting Moon also had a sigh on her face. She also heard about the incident of Chaiyu Pass, the King of Joy, causing trouble in the martial arts world. The situation back then was even more dangerous than what Lu Xiaofeng said. During the 10 years when the King of Joy blended 100 unique skills outside the pass, he was not idle. He raised a group of murderous demons without blinking an eye. After returning to the Central Plains, allowing these demons to burn, kill, and plunder, countless sects perished in that catastrophe. The Yihua Palace was also affected, and the first palace master, who was her master, perished in this great disaster. If it weren't for Shen Lang's intervention, the Ming martial arts world would have been destroyed by Chai Yuguan long ago. Therefore, she has always held respect for this benevolent hero Shen Lang in her heart. At this moment, the Sword Immortal list was shaken, and a stream of light rushed straight towards the East China Sea, disappearing in an instant. Then, Tianxing rises again. Ranked 26th on the Sword Immortal list, with the Green Dragon meeting and the Big Dragon head, and the Eternal Sword in the White Jade capital. In the later stage of Heaven and Man. Chapter 10. The Story of the Qinglong Society, Moving 3,000 Miles. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ranked 26th on the Sword Immortal list, with the Green Dragon meeting and the Big Dragon head, and the Eternal Sword in the White Jade capital. Qinglong Club. It's actually Qinglong Club. This organization really exists. In the Tongtian restaurant, many powerful martial artists in the martial arts world are all showing their shocked faces. The imperial dynasties of the world have changed, and the martial arts sects in the world have changed. However, the Qinglong society has remained majestic from beginning to end. Like an ancient forbidden area for monitoring the rivers and lakes, surpassing the rivers and lakes. No one knows their background, let alone how strong this organization is. Even some people doubt whether the Qinglong society really exists. But now, there is no doubt that the Sword Immortal list has given the answer, the Green Dragon Society really exists. Lu Daxia, you have traveled around the world and are widely known. Can you tell us about the leader of the Qinglong society? Everyone looked at Lu Xiaofeng, wanting to know the root of this mysterious dragon head, by Yujing, from him. But they were disappointed. Lu Xiaofeng shook her head and said, "Sorry everyone, I know the same thing about the Qinglong Association as you do. I'm not sure about the Qinglong Association. The whereabouts of the Qinglong Society are mysterious, and no one knows its location. Not to mention the White Jade Capital, which is the head of the dragon, it is difficult to see ordinary members of the Green Dragon Association." Lu Xiaofeng is not sure, it is also normal. What kind of power is this Qinglong Society? Why are they so afraid? Su Fengnian also had a curious expression on his face, and he could see the reactions of everyone in the restaurant. These people are all renowned experts from all over the world, but when they hear the name of the Qinglong Society, they all show a look of fear. This aroused great interest in Su Fengnian. Unfortunately, no one knows its origin. Does Qinglong know the White Jade Capital? Lu Changfeng looked at the name with a hint of brilliance in his eyes. What? Mr. Lu knows about this person. Su Fengnian saw Lu Changfeng showing a strange expression and quickly asked. I do know some. Lu Changfeng nodded. The Qinglong Society is both righteous and evil, stretching for 100 years without anyone knowing when, where, who is in charge, and when it infiltrates the martial arts world. It seems to have existed in this world since the day it existed. The entire organization, both good and evil, or in other words, it cannot be defined by good and evil. Upon hearing someone talk about the Qinglong Club, everyone in the restaurant cast curious glances. Qi stared at Lu Changfeng, waiting quietly for his message. The Qinglong Society is divided into 12 halls, each named after the month. January is responsible for goals, February is responsible for penetration, March is responsible for delivering messages, and April is responsible for financial resources. May is responsible for punishment, June is responsible for training, and July is responsible for planning. Responsible for actions in August, September, and October, responsible for eliminating rebellions in November, and responsible for assassinations in December. Except for the 12 halls, the Qinglong Society has 365 separate altars throughout the world. The 12 halls are respectively in charge, and the 12 halls leaders are all strong individuals in the early stages of the heavenly and human realm. Above the 12 halls, there are 4 major altars. Divine Dragon, Flying Dragon, Crouching Dragon, and Red Dragon. They are in charge of the affairs of the 12 halls and directly responsible for the Dragon Head altar. The 4 great altar masters are all powerful beings in the mid-stage of the realm of heaven and humanity who cannot be separated from the world. Throughout history, the great dragon head of the Qinglong Society was also selected from the 4 great altar masters. Only the strongest one can succeed as the great dragon head and take charge of the Qinglong Society. 365 sub-altars spread throughout Kyushu. The 12 halls have clear division of labor. The 4 major altars serve as Prime Minister's affairs, while the dragon head sits at the center of control and presides over the green dragon. What a meticulous layout. What a terrifying force. In the early stage of the 12 heavenly men and the middle stage of the 4 heavenly men, the great dragon head is even more powerful in the later stage of the heavenly men. Such a terrifying force is probably enough to sweep across the 9 provinces. With the architecture system of the Qinglong Association being made public, everyone is amazed. They all thought that heaven and earth would never come out, and there were few in the world. There is a powerful force that can have a heavenly and human seat, all of which are top-level sects that can be passed down for hundreds of years without interruption. Even if it is a powerful force like the Flower Palace, only inviting the moon is a celestial being, and Lianxing is still only a half-step celestial being. In addition, for the vast majority of sects, having a great master and a great master in charge is a great sect. Unexpectedly, according to rumors, the Green Dragon Society, which is extremely mysterious and surpasses the 9 provinces, rivers and lakes, has only one power, with 17 heavenly and human powerhouses. 17 heavenly beings, all in one power. It can be described as shocking and shocking. Lu Xiaofeng's expression moved as she looked at Lu Changfeng. Mr. Lu, you just said that only the strongest among the 4 great altars of the Qinglong society can succeed as the dragon head. Is it this white jade capital? Not bad. Lu Changfeng nodded and said, Beiliang is not only the strongest among the 4 major altar masters, but also the strongest among all the previous dragon heads. He only made one move in his life, but this time it was not against the enemy, but one person against one country. What? One person is against one country. Mr. Lu, could you please explain in detail to help us clarify our doubts? Everyone looked at Lu Changfeng with a hopeful expression on their faces. Obviously, Lu Changfeng's words aroused their thirst for knowledge. The invitation moon in the wing room also cast a curious gaze. She had heard of the name of the Qinglong society for a long time, but she had heard of it earlier. This force is extremely terrifying and must not be provoked. As for what kind of terrorist act it is, she is not sure. Only when Lu Changfeng revealed the truth with just one word did she suddenly realize. No wonder the master once said in the past that the Green Dragon Society should not be angered or provoked. I see. 17 days of people are enough to sweep across the 9 provinces and unify the world. Who dares to provoke? Who has the fate to provoke? Regarding everyone's expectations, Lu Changfeng didn't show any interest and said in a low voice. This matter has to start with Shen. Back then, Shen killed the happy Wang Chiyu Pass and solved the crisis for the Ming dynasty's martial arts world. At that time, Beiliang, who was the leader of the Qinglong society, admired Shen and sent out the Qinglong society Zunjiling. This order is made by the first generation of the great dragon head of the Qinglong society, totaling 3 pieces. No matter who holds the Zunjiling, they can command the Qinglong association to do something for them free of charge. Later, Shen went out to sea to visit Immortals and never returned, while the Zunjiling was passed on to his son Xianxia. Xianxia lives in seclusion in the East China Sea, but has a good friend, the loyal and filial king of the Ming dynasty, Xianxia. This person is extremely loyal and filial, he is a generation-wise king. It's just a pity to be framed by a villain, imprisoned in heaven, and executed on a certain day. Xianxia knew that his friend was in trouble and rushed thousands of miles, killing him in the dungeon. Unfortunately, at this moment, Hu Yan appeared to be completely loyal and had already committed suicide. Xianxia was heartbroken, and with his 2 sons, Hu Yanxian, he killed them and escaped from the heavenly prison. My own prison was pierced by someone, and Emperor Ming was furious. Send 100,000 forbidden troops to pursue Xianxia and the son of Hu Yanxian. Although Xianxia's cultivation is not bad, he has 2 dragging oil bottles and has to deal with 100,000 forbidden troops. His strength is beyond his grasp. In the end, we had to take out the Zunjiling and ask Qinglong to take action. Beiliang led the experts of the Qinglong society to rush to the Yenyun desert to receive Xianxia. But when facing the 100,000 forbidden army, Beiliang made a mistake. It's easy to start a war, but once it does, it will inevitably provoke the anger of the court, completely pushing the martial arts world against the court, and then it will be another disaster. But if we don't go to war, we'll have to face the death of Xianxia and refuse to save him. The Zunjiling he sent out is just a joke. In the end, in a dilemma, Xianxia held back the experts of the Green Dragon Society and Xianxia and others, leaving behind the broken queen alone. Holding the eternal sword, each person with their own sword, they advanced to the peak of heaven and humanity, fought for 3,000 miles, killed with blood for 7 days, and swept through 100,000 forbidden soldiers. After this battle, 100,000 forbidden soldiers bled, and the Ming dynasty suffered shame, known as the dragon scale assassination blood case, in history. Although Beiliang forcefully reached the peak of the heavenly people and repelled the forbidden army, he injured his foundation by forcefully breaking through the border. At that time, Beiliang had already reached the pinnacle of heaven and humanity, just one step away from the peak. With Beiliang's profound talent, it only took 3 years and 5 years of warm cultivation to successfully reach the pinnacle of heaven and humanity. It can even prove the great longevity of heaven and humanity through the body of a person without leakage. Unfortunately, in order to fulfill his oath, he took action early and forcibly broke through the realm. Afterwards, although he killed and retreated from the forbidden army, he fell into the late stage of the realm of heaven and man, and there is no hope of returning to the peak of heaven and man in this life.